everybody. This is Lauren, the Cheerful Baker. We have a few minutes before class starts, so I'm just going to test and make sure that everybody can see me in the group. I'm excited about this. Let's see. It'll take just a second, and hopefully it is going to work. If you are on and you can see me, I know that I'm live on my page, so that is a wonderful thing. I hope that I am live in the class. So let's see if I am. I do not think that I am live. Hey, Charlotte. I don't think I'm live in the class for some reason. So let me try and fix that here for just 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Let's see. Let me just put a note. Okay, let me put a note in the class. I am currently live on my Facebook page. For some reason, it is not streaming here. I tell you, streaming and Facebook sometimes are not my friend. But it's okay because, oh, it says live now. Okay, maybe it is working. Anyway, how's everybody doing today? We are going to make some super cute cookies. Here's the lemon branch. I hopped on just a few minutes early, so we're going to wait until We're going to wait until it's actually time to get started. We're going to do the lemon tree. We are going to do this one right here, the tile. We're going to do the lemon and the bow and the plaque. And just an FYI, while we're waiting for others to hop on, I made these cookies and froze them, and they came out perfectly. Even this one that had the hand painting. And so I'm going to tell you how I froze those in case you want to do that yourself. All I did is I put them inside one of these little bags. Then I put the bags inside a container with a lid, put them in my freezer. Nothing fancy. And then I took them out this morning. I allowed them to sit out on the counter to dry, and to come up to room temperature. Took them out of the packages, and they absolutely turned out great. Now, the reason that I decided to do this particular design is because this is one of the most popular bridal designs right now. For some reason, people are just loving the lemons and the tiles, and I wanted to make it easy for you all. So tell me where y'all are from. I'm curious about that. Charlotte, you are on, where did you say you're from? Washington State. I'm in Versailles, Kentucky, and if you don't know me, my name's Lauren. I'm the Cheerful Baker. You might have seen me on the Food Network in 2022. I was on the Christmas Cookie Challenge. The episode, it was season 6. Some places it's episode 7. Some places it's episode 6. But it was Christmas then and now. I'm a retired art teacher and an artist, and the canvas for my cookies, my canvas has become cookies because it's a lot easier, and, you can eat it if you mess up. So, hi, Tiffany. Yes, it is hot and humid today in Kentucky too. So I am happy to be inside. Can y'all see Winston, my best buddy? He's over there too, laying on the floor. He's hot. He's like, I'm happy to be inside. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you are following along, that's awesome. I love it. Feel free to ask questions. If you are not following along and you're watching this on the replay, you can definitely ask questions. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? I pre-recorded this class. I'm going to talk over it because that way I can answer the questions at the same time. Otherwise, it's hard for me to do, to do all of the things. If you do not have if you want to purchase the cookie cutters, you can go to cheerfulbaker.com. You can purchase the cookie cutters. If you want the lemon and tile set right here, you can just send me an email or actually I'll put a link on there how you can get that. That way you can hand cut the designs if you want to. One more thing that I just wanted to tell you about in the beginning, because I do not want to forget. One thing that is, I think, the absolute trickiest thing to do as a cookie decorator is package cookies. I mean, I've made hundreds of sets of cookies, and every single time that I package them, I think, what size box do I use? It's so hard for me. So I have a cookie packaging cheat sheet, and I'm just going to share that with you real quickly where you can get that. If you go to cheerfulbaker.com, you'll see right here in the center, cookie packaging cheat sheet. And if you put your email, we will send that to you. It has sizes, it has links. It makes it so much easier to package cookies. So I just wanted to tell you about that from the very beginning. And let's go ahead and get started. Now, the colors that we're going to use for this set, let me get my list here. We're using bright yellow for piping and flooding, white for piping and flooding, light blue, piping consistency, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and then a thinner consistency, and then green, piping and flooding. So, pretty basic. And we're going to get started with the one that is, I think, the easiest, which is the lemon. Now, the class is going to be, I don't know, probably 35 minutes or something, maybe a little bit longer if you all have a lot of questions. And let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do, actually, let me make sure before I do this that you all can see it well on Facebook. Can somebody tell me if you all can see if it's showing up okay on Facebook? Because, okay, you can. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm taking my yellow piping icing and I'm going to pipe my cookie. And you'll notice if your screen is big enough, especially if you're watching this on the computer, when I pipe my cookies, I always hold my piping bag a little bit above my cookie. So I'm holding it about 1/4 of an inch up, and that way my icing line is going to be very rounded when I put it down on my cookie. If I kind of smush my icing line along the cookie, my icing line is going to be very flat. And then when I flood on top of it, my icing is just going to fall over the side. So I'm piping around the edge of my cookie with my yellow. And I always touch the cookie and then I drag my icing line around above. And then I touch the cookie again because that icing is sort of like a magnet. And it'll just stick right to the cookie. Next, I'm going to take the same piping icing, and because my cookie, let me get this one out, because I wanted to have an edge of yellow around it, like this, that's why I'm doing this double layer of the piping. So the piping icing is done. Next, I'm going to get my yellow flood icing, And just a note, I like to use tipless bags because I don't like to, I do not like to wash piping tips. So that's what I choose to use. And I just cut a very small hole. If you are a newer cookie decorator and you're uncomfortable using tipless bags, I recommend a Wilton tip number 2 for piping and a tip number 3 for flooding. Just a little note. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flood this area. And I don't need to worry about cratering because I'm not going to let this area dry and then do the white in the center. They're going to butt up right next to each other. I know you're getting thirsty for lemonade. They're going to butt up right next to each other. So there's not going to be an icing area that's real small that's going to dry. Normally you'll have cratering if that happens, but in this case, we don't need to worry about that. So now, while that icing is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and fill the center with white. And I'm just using my scribe to make sure that that yellow goes completely to the edge. So this is my white flood icing. And I'm going to go just fill this in. And if you're following along and you're like, Lauren, you're going way too fast, then this video will be recorded and you'll be able to find it on the page forever. I mean, I don't plan on taking it down, or on YouTube. So that way, if you get a little bit stuck, you can just put that cookie aside and then you can finish it at the end of class. Now, the biggest mistake that I see new cookie decorators make is not putting enough icing. So you want to make sure that you really put a good amount of flood icing, because if you don't, your cookie is not going to have that good flat finish. Usually if cookies are lumpy, it's for 2 reasons. One is that your flood is not thick enough, or meaning you didn't put enough on your cookie, or your actual flooding icing is too thick and it won't spread out. So we're done with that cookie. We've done the yellow on the side and we've done the white. Now what we're going to do is we are going to flood the rest of our cookies with white, because these cookies all have a white base with a color on top. Sometimes I'll do this step maybe the day before. In this case, it's not really necessary, but that's what we're going to do next. And you'll notice that I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my white piping icing. I'm going to go around the edge just like I did with the yellow. And then I'm going to flood the cookie white. I tell you, it's crazy. Square cookies and round cookies are the hardest, aren't they? If you bake your square cookie and it does not come out square, what you can do is you can take a microplaner, like a zester, and you can actually go along the sides of your cookies and you can square them up that way. So I now am taking my white flood icing and I am filling it in. And when I flood a cookie, I like to go from the edge towards the center. If people only knew how long it took to decorate cookies, right? And I'm adding more pressure to my bag so that the icing comes out a little bit faster. Also, just a little tip, when you're decorating cookies, don't ever have an overhead fan on because they will dry too fast. But it is good if you have a clean fan, a little desktop fan on low, and after you flood your cookie, you can put it in front of a fan and make sure that it's very clean. because that will help your icing dry faster. Now, I like this stab method, meaning I'm going to fill my cookie with icing, and then I'm going to stab the cookie and I'm going to shake it, and the icing is going to flatten out. I like using about a 20-second icing because I like using a little bit thicker of a flood because it never fails. My icing will go over the edge if it's too thin. Now, what do I mean by a 20-second? Let's say maybe 15 to 20 second. When I have my icing in a bowl and I pull my knife through, there's a line. You start counting, and however many seconds it takes for that line to close up, that's how many seconds your icing is. So let's say this is probably about a 15-second icing, meaning it'll flatten out, but you got to help it a little bit. But then it won't fall over the sides. Now, if you have a little dot in the center, you just barely touch it, a little dimple, and it'll go back down. So now we have to allow this cookie to dry because we're going to stencil on top of it. And in reality, if you're doing this today, you do not want to do the stenciling until later this afternoon or preferably tomorrow. But I'm going to show you how to do it just so you'll know. Whenever you do royal icing stenciling on top of a cookie, you do put a little bit of pressure on there. So you want to make sure that your base layer is good and dry. If you are using an airbrush machine, it's not that big of a deal. You can let it dry a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours for airbrushing. But for royal icing stenciling, you want to make sure that it is good and dry. So this cookie's done, and we're going to go on and we are going to do the exact same thing to the bow cookie. This is one of my favorite cookies. Bows are so popular right now. I mean, I think bows are always popular, but the ones with the little skinny edge like this, the little skinny ribbons are super duper popular right now. So this is something that you could use in any set. Again, I'm just touching the cookie where I want the piping icing to stick. And then I'm going around the very edge. Next, I'm going to take my flooding icing. I'm going to do the same thing that I've done before, just flooding the cookie with that white icing. And again, the biggest thing is when you're flooding your cookies, absolutely make sure that you get enough icing on there. Let me tell you another little tip about icing. Some people add white to their icing. I never do that. Royal icing, as long as you mix it enough, is bright white. You do not need white icing. Some people only mix their icing until it's mixed and it looks like the consistency that you would have for royal icing. That's not mixed enough. You need to mix it at least 3 minutes for my recipe because you want it to look like marshmallow fluff. The longer you mix it, as long as it looks like marshmallow fluff, it's going to be bright white. And then you're going to add water to thin it down a little bit. Now, I just put my royal icing recipe out on my website. So if you go to my website, cheerfulbaker.com, and you go to the blogs, you'll see a blog post about royal icing, and you can find it there. Do you always outline before flooding? My outline seems to always dry, and then the flood doesn't look good. I've tried to make it less stiff, and it still seems to not work. Yes, I always outline before flooding. Barbara, my guess is that you are not putting enough flood because if you don't put enough on there, then you can see your icing line. But that's a great question. You also, the more practice you get, you learn that you can actually put your flood almost on top of your piping line. And as long as your flood is a little bit thicker, it's not going to fall over the side. Next, let's do our shield. Now, the shield cookie has a lot of different little edges, right? So you'll notice when I do that, I touch my cookie, I draw the line, I touch the cookie again. A cookie like this, it would be hard to go around with one complete outline. So I stop and start a lot. Oh, I put a message in the Facebook group, Karen. I don't know. StreamYard is crazy and it is not. Hold on. Hold on. I'm going to go in the Facebook group real quick and tell everybody to. Hold on one second. Hey, everybody. For some reason, it is not streaming to this particular group. So go join me on my Facebook page, which is Cheerful Baker. It's where this event is, and you can find me live there. Bye. Okay. Yes, I don't know what's going on. I tested this and did it ahead of time, but I don't know if it's Facebook, but I apologize. But I will put the recording over in that group when this is done. It's crazy. I do not like Facebook. Yes, my poison ivy is better. I mean, it took me, in fact, my heart is racing right now because I have been on steroids for a month. The poison ivy took that long. So I'm sorry that you all had problems. I tested this yesterday. I tested it this morning, but nothing ever works the way it's supposed to. But I'm glad that you're here. So let's go ahead. And again, this will be recorded if you missed the beginning. Yeah, that poison ivy was insane. I've never had anything like that in my life. I was on a week of steroids and then I'm on day 15 of 18 days. It's crazy. So I just did the same thing. I did the white around the edge and now I'm doing the white flood icing. And I get really, really close to the edge because I do like covering up that piping line. But if your piping line's showing, it's probably because you're either not putting enough icing or your icing's too thin. Sharita, I'm glad that you're here. Yeah, Facebook. I mean, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with trying to do live videos on here, but we got to use what we have, right? Next, we're going to do the exact same thing with the lemon branch cookie. Let me go back over to the group. Do y'all know Shark Week is in a couple weeks? Is anybody planning on doing cookies for Shark Week? I'm going to do some. I just created some cute cookie cutters today. I'm going to decorate them and put them out on my site. But these cookies right here, I just love because I love bright colors. Oh, I'm glad you snuck in. You can sneak in. Listen, this is free. Everybody's welcome. This is a free class. So again, you'll notice there's a lot of icing on there, and I'm just using my scribe, and I'm shaking my cookie, and I'm flattening it out. Let me tell you one more tip about icing, because we can all use icing, right? Icing tips. If you are having trouble with a lot of bubbles in your icing's too thin. I'm in all kinds of Facebook groups, and I see the questions that people have, and that's a big one. So if you're experiencing a lot of bubbles, your icing's too thin. I never have any bubbles in my icing, but I also make my I make my icing ahead of time. And I'll let it sit, for 30 minutes or so. So if there are any ice bubbles, they come to the top. Yes to Shark Week. My grandson's doing a lemonade stand. Oh, that's awesome. Well, you're welcome, Nancy. Okay, so let's do this one. This is such a fun cookie. Now we're only going to do the bottom right now of the planter, and we're going to do it in white. Again, piping around the edge, flooding it in. And then with this cookie, we're going to have to allow this to dry. I probably let this dry for about 2 hours before doing the design on top. I have a very, very light hand because I've been a painter for years. So I don't have to let my cookies dry quite as long before I can paint on them. Yes, you could totally use that cutter as a baby rattle. I didn't even think about that. That's so funny. Isn't it awesome how other people see things, but there's the back of it. That would make a perfect rattle. That's a great idea. So now we're going to go back to our lemon cookie. And by now it's been drying. I don't know, how long have we been going? 20 minutes or so. And you can definitely do the part that's on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my yellow piping icing, and I'm going to create the little triangles that you see on a lemon wedge, on a lemon slice. And now I'm telling you, I cannot do things symmetrically to save my life. So you'll notice that my lemon is kind of wonky. Like my triangles don't reach the very bottom of the lemon slice. And if you look at a lemon, they kind of do. But the interesting thing is, I put a poll out, and I think that this was most people's favorite cookie, and nobody noticed that. Nobody said, Lauren, those triangles don't meet the bottom of the lemon. So that is just a perfect example of, we don't have to be perfect. People don't notice those things. They notice pretty cookies that are delicious. But I'm going to create those little triangles. Do you sift your powdered sugar before making icing? I have never sifted my powdered sugar, but I do. Yeah, I've never done that. I buy Domino sugar, or Kroger sugar, which is probably made by Domino, and I've never sifted it. If you do have that problem, I would definitely sift it. It also could be, let me tell you a little tip. It also could be your meringue powder and not your powdered sugar. So when I make my royal icing, I mix my meringue powder with warm water, and I mix it till it's cappuccino foam. I make sure that there are no bits of meringue powder, and then I add my powdered sugar, and I've never had to sift. So it actually might be your meringue powder. Barb, that's true. It is nature. So I'm going over top of my little triangles with my yellow flood icing. And I'm going to do all these at once. And then I'm going to, because I want to add just a little bit more detail, I'm going to add some white on top of the yellow. You wouldn't have to do that. You could do it with white food gel after the fact, after it's dry, but I'm going to do it with my white piping icing. And I'm just drawing some little lines. It just adds a little extra design. And if you look at a real lemon, it's not completely yellow. Next, I'm going to take my scribe and I'm just going to kind of mix those in a little bit because you don't want real, stiff lines. And that cookie's done. I mean, this is a really easy cookie. I tell you, if you all have kids or grandkids and they're doing a lemonade stand, make some of these cookies, let them sell them. They'll make a lot more money. They could help you make them. Next, we are going to do our bow, but I'm going to take this off because I just want to show you all something. So this is the tip that we use for our bow, and it is Wilton Tip 102. And so I have thick icing in here with my Wilton tip. And the way that you use the tips is you always want to make sure there's a fat end. It looks like a teardrop. There's a fat end and a skinny end. You always want to put the fat end towards your cookie. The fat end is going to be towards the bottom, and the skinny end is going to be up. And the reason that is because when your icing comes out, you don't want this big old fat thing of icing to come out on the top. You want it to be skinny. So you want there to be, let me show you. It's gonna be, you all can't see this, but yum. You want the skinny part of the tip to be up. So let's start again. So the skinny part of the tip is up, and all I'm doing is squeezing. And because I want it to be a little bit ruffled, I'm actually moving my hand. If you shake your hand, it's going to make the ruffle come out. If you don't shake your hand, it's going to be more thin. So again, my tip is at about a 45-degree angle. The fat end is almost touching the cookie. The skinny end is up. It's so easy. It might take you a little practice, but once you get this, I use this tip for 1,000 different things. So again, it's Wilton tip number 102. I'm just making the little trindles of the bow. I want them to also be wavy, so I'm moving my hand, squeezing the bag. So easy. Now, the key to this cookie also is you want to make sure that your icing is thick enough. So when you're making your icing and you pull it up, you take a little knife or a spoon and you take, let's say a knife because it's easier to tell. You take up your knife and you dip it in your icing and you pull it up. There will be a little peak right at the end of your knife. If your peak stands out straight, doesn't move, that's what you want for this cookie. If your peak is falling over, that means you have too much water in your icing and you're not going to have a good bow. So when you take a knife again, you want your peak, you want it to be stiff peak. If it's too stiff, it's going to hurt your wrist. Now, how do you know if it's too stiff? If you pull your knife out and your stiff peak has jagged edges, it's too stiff. It doesn't sound like, you all might be thinking, what are you talking about? But once you do it, you'll see exactly what I mean. If it's too thin, you can add some sifted powdered sugar, meaning you put the powdered sugar through a sifter as it's going into the bowl, so it's very fine. You can make it thick that way. So that cookie's done. Now, let's do our plaque. So you could totally skip this step, but I thought that it would be fun to do an edge along the plaque. And so when I'm doing detail work like this, where you want it to be kind of small, my go-to tip is tip number 1.5. It's a PME tip. It's my all-time favorite tip. It's the only tip that I ever use for writing. It's about $5 or $6, so it's expensive for a piping tip. It is worth every penny. It's called a SUPA tip, which means that it's made of one piece of metal. It's very smooth. It's just the best tip ever. PME tip number 1.5. So that's what I'm using for this. So I'm just doing an outline with my light blue. I'm going to do a double outline to make it look cuter. Again, you wouldn't have to do this at all. Now, excuse me, I do not show how I put the initial. Isn't it, Melissa? It's the best tip. I don't show how I put the initial on the cookie. So let me talk you through that while I'm doing this. I use a website called DaFont, and let me put it in here. And it's where you can find every type of font that you could possibly want. And I use the DaFont with my phone connected to my projector. So if you're looking for clip art, or not for clip art, but if you're looking for fonts, it's the best place to find them. And I'll just find the font that I want. I'll put in the letter that I want. I'll project it onto my cookie, and I will go from there. So that's how I did the little J that's on top. But it's hard to film that because when you're trying to record using a projector, it blinks and it gives you a headache. It's the craziest thing ever. But I'm going to do a blog post on how to use that. Now let me back this up a little bit because I didn't start. I got to talking. So once you do this, Barbara, I use different fonts all the time. There's not one that I use. I just usually go for the script and just look through and find what I want. Sometimes you can also put like the word, you can put the word baby into Google, type in word baby, and you will find images of a specific word. And sometimes I'll use those also, which work great. I'm still learning DaFont and wonder, when you have two words, is there a way to have them on two lines? There is not. Unfortunately, there is not a way to do that. So you just have to do them separately. Okay. So we're almost done with this, and then we're going to have to go back to the lemon. Not have to go back. We're going to go back to the lemon. Now, you'll notice where I start my branch. You can use a projector to do this. I look at the clip art and I say, okay, where would that probably start? And I eyeball it. But if you have a hard time eyeballing things, of course you can use a projector and the clip art. But I know that I can tell by looking at this that this is about where the top of the lemon will start. So I'm using my piping icing, and I'm just looking at the clip art, and I'm drawing in where my leaves would be. Barbara says, add the font to your computer, then open Word and type the two words on two lines using that font. Oh, that's a brilliant idea. So I'm just outlining in my leaves with my piping icing. I almost think of this like a coloring book. Now I want my leaves to have a little bit more dimension. So I'm doing a center line also, and I'm going to flood these two areas separately. And I'm going to allow a little bit of dry time in between so that you can see the separation of the leaves. Another thing that you could do is you could do the leaf as a whole leaf. And then after it dries, you could put a dividing line on top. I do that sometimes. Now I'm using the hole method, which means I'm taking my scribe and I'm poking holes in my white icing because I don't want there to be craters. And these are very small icing areas, and that works so well. Now, the trick to doing that, though, is you do not want your icing to be completely dry. If it's completely dry, sometimes you will crack it, like you'll crack the whole cookie. So you want to do this after your icing. I mean, my icing, what has been on there, maybe 20 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. But you'll notice if you poke the hole and the hole closes up, you just need to let your icing dry just a little bit longer. So next, I'm going to take my green flood. Excuse me. I'm going to go along one side of my leaf. And then I'm going to give them a little dry time. I'm going to see if my husband can bring me a drink. And excuse me. And then while we let that dry, I'm going to go ahead and do the lemon. So I'm just starting at the bottom of where that stem is, and I'm using my piping icing to create the design of a lemon. I want it to go a little bit higher. And then I'm going to take my flood icing and I'm just going to flood that lemon in. Isn't this the prettiest color yellow? You can use any kind of food gel. I love the Sugar Art. That's my favorite go-to color. They have new gel colors, and that's what I use. If you haven't used the Sugar Art, try them. I love the owners too, so I like supporting them. But their website is thesugarart.com, and you can use code Cheerful Baker for a 10% discount. I'm an affiliate for them just because that's all I ever use, and I love their stuff. Now I'm going to show you my little trick. Okay, I made lemon royal icing transfers, and sometimes people will take an iPad or a phone and they'll put a little piece of one of these little wrappers that they use for their cookies on top, and then they'll do the icing directly on top of that. But what I like to do sometimes is this little trick where you take the cookie cutter, you put it down on your piece of paper or your clear bag, and then you know how big the icing royal icing transfer needs to be because you know you know how big the cookie is. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm just going to, make a little lemon. I'm looking at the lemon tree to see about how big I want them to be. I'm just drawing this in with my piping icing. And then I'm going to fill them in with my flood. So that's just my little trick to doing royal icing transfers. Sunshine's a great color. It is. It's just so happy. So there you go. Now I know how large they need to be. Now I would make, and then I'm just going to fill them in with my flood icing. I put these in a dehydrator but you can do them overnight. I made a bazillion of these because then I have them and they'll last for like a year. So that's my trick of using my cookie cutter to make the right size of royal icing transfers. Yes, the sugar art, you don't have to use very much of the color. It's really, really good stuff. When I use royal icing transfers, I put them in my dehydrator at, you don't want to put it too high because they'll sort of disintegrate. So I usually put them on about 105, 110 degrees for about an hour or so, and that usually dries them. Royal icing transfers are the best. They're such a time saving. Yes, their pearl colors are awesome. Everything about the sugar art I love it. Any questions about the royal icing transfers? Again, when you're doing something that's really small like this, you want to make sure that your flood icing is a little bit thicker. If it's too thin, you're going to have holes in all of your lemons. I'm making another one. I don't think y'all need to see all that. So let's go back. Let's go back to this cookie. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in the top with the white. The reason that I didn't do that at the same time that I did the base is because I want there to be a little bit of space in between those two sections so that it looks like a pot. Yes, a dehydrator with temperature settings makes a big difference. So I'm just filling this in with my flood. Oh. Then while that is wet, I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to add little lemons using the wet on wet technique. And I'm using a yellow flood icing to do that so it sinks in. After doing this, I've decided that this is an unnecessary step because you cover it up with the green and you can't even see it. So don't worry about that. The cool decorating on your bow. I have a different design bow. Yes, absolutely. Now we're going to go back to our lemon and we are going to fill in the other part of our green leaf because you only have to let it crust over before you do the second section. And then it'll look like there's, you have a little differentiation to your leaf. It's just not a plain old boring leaf. The cool decorating on your bow. I'll also follow your Baking Bestie. She has tons of free royal icing transfers. They're amazing. I love free tutorials, so appreciate it. Who do you follow? Is that Fressy is my Baking Bestie? But I have lots of wonderful friends in the baking community. I'm so, so thankful. Or is that the name, Your Baking Bestie? Because that's kind of fun. Next, okay, let me stop here because I want to share something with you all before we do that. So, like I said, before you do this cookie, you have to make sure that the white is very, very dry. Okay. If you try doing what we're getting ready to do before your white is dry, you're just going to smush your icing. But I want to show you what I use because I love this thing. Your Baking Bestie is the name of the Facebook page. Oh, that's so cool. I've never even heard of her, so I need to check her out. I use this stencil holder. I'm not an affiliate for them. I get nothing. I just love it so much. It's from the Sweetest Tears. And the reason I love it, it is so easy. So it opens up like this. You put your stencil on top. You clip this on. It's magnetic. Hold on. I can't do this while it's holding up, while it's up. It's magnetic, really easy. You open it up. You put your cookie right here. You close it. You swipe over it. But the reason I love this is it has this place at the bottom. So let's say you are, now a square is easy, but let's say you are stenciling a specific design. What you can do is you can actually draw around the design on a piece of paper, and you can put the piece of paper under here. And then you're going to put your cookie in the exact same place every single time. Round stencils, you can't use this. You can only use this for square stencils. I really don't even know what you would use for round stencils, to tell you the truth. I only use square stencils, but this thing is amazing. I love it. So let's go back. Also, I want to tell you something about stencil icing. Your stencil icing needs to be about the same consistency that you use for the bow. If it's too thick and you try to stencil, you're not going to be able to get it on there very smooth. If it's too thin, it's going to run underneath the stencil. So you want it to either be about the same as the bow, or your piping icing will work fine. This is something that you need to practice a little bit, but those are the problems. If you can't smooth it out, your icing's too thick. If it's running underneath your stencil, it's too thin. So here we go. Let me back that up just so you can see how I start. So all I'm doing is I just took the tip off from where I use the tip with the bow, and I'm just squeezing it on. I'm going to use a scraper. I'm scraping it over top. Another thing I love about this stencil holder is you can lift it up, and if you have it on there too thick, you just put it right back down. Excuse me, you smooth it out. You lift it up. There you go. So easy, so easy. When I have small stencils that do not fit into the holder, I made a frame for it. Attach the stencil to the frame. Oh, that is a great idea. Yes, you could just take like a piece of stencil material, cut out a center, put the smaller stencil in. That's a great idea. Yes, this holder, it makes life so much easier. Now, we're done basically, but I want to add a little extra to my lemon. So I'm just going to take my piping icing and I'm going to do some little dots along the edge. It just adds a little bit of texture. And I like texture on cookies. We're done. We're done. So let me remove this. So again, let's just recap. We started out with our lemon cookie. Yes, the lemon leaf cutter, all the ones that we did, you can find in my shop. Then we did our bow. We did our plaque. Our lemon tile. Our tree. And our lemon. And I just realized for some reason I did not download how to do this part right here. So I'm just going to, I think I still have the video. I'll see if I can post it on my page. But I'm just going to tell you how I did it. The key to, because this is gosh, I messed up on this one. I didn't do this or this. So let me just tell you, okay? This right here, the lemon leaves on the top of the topiary tree, all I did was I took stiff green icing and I cut a leaf shape into the end of the bag. But you also could use this leaf tip, which is tip number, I put it on here, tip number 352. And so you just simply touch your cookie and pull up little leaves all over it. And then I topped it with my royal icing lemons. Now the bottom, the way that I did that is my secret weapon, which is airbrush color. A lot of people like to do hand painting on cookies using gel color mixed with either water, which you can do, but sometimes that'll eat away at your icing, or gel color mixed with Everclear. And I don't like that because it dries too fast. So airbrush color works absolutely perfect. I'm almost positive I have that video, so I'm going to post that. So that's what I did with here. I just took some airbrush color and I just drew on the cookie in the shape of, you know, some little flowers that don't even really look like flowers. It doesn't matter. It's just a design on there. But do you see how there's some dark places and then some light places? You get that from the airbrush color. I love using airbrush color. What else can I answer? Anybody have any questions? Anybody? So be sure and go to my website, which is cheerfulbaker.com. Sign up for the cookie packaging cheat sheet if you don't have that, because I think that that will be a game changer maybe for you all. I think, let's see, I might be able to put the link here. If you are still interested in purchasing this cookie cutter set, you can certainly do that. Just search for lemon, and let me see if I can find that for you real quick and put the link in there for this. And the set comes with, here it is. The set comes with the stencil if you buy the entire set. So there's the lemon set. And you can get it as an STL file. But I hope that this class was helpful for you all. Okay, if you enjoy taking classes, then be sure and check out the Cheerful Box on my website, which is an online cookie decorating subscription. It comes to your door every month. It's super fun because you get an online class plus all of the cookie cutters, and it's a surprise every month. And our next box is getting ready to ship out. And the next class is getting ready to ship out. And the theme is so fun. It's a woodland baby theme. And so I'm going to show you one of the cookie cutters. Isn't that cute? So you can go check that out. Your video didn't start, so I didn't see the bow. Okay, this is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to watch it. And I'm so sorry. I had problems with it streaming to that Facebook group page, but it will be here. I'll put it. But the consistency for the bow, you want to make sure that it is a thicker consistency, meaning when you take your knife out of your royal icing, there'll be a point, like there'll be a tip right on your icing. You want your tip to be standing out straight. If your tip is folded over, that means there's too much water in your icing, and it is not going to stand up like you want it to. If your tip is sticking out and it's very jagged, your icing's too dry and it will just about kill your hand. So you want to make sure that your tip is sticking out straight. Thank you so much. Let me take a drink. I should have gotten a drink. Talking too much. I hope that answers the question. Any other questions before we say farewell? It's a beautiful day here in Kentucky. It's supposed to rain all day. So my friend invited me to come to the lake, and I'm thinking that might just work out today for me. But thank you all for watching. Visit my website if you're interested in cookie cutters or classes or any other fun stuff. Do I sell the stencil for the square tile separately? I need to put that. I didn't put that out there, but I will put that out there today. I guess that's it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'm going to try to do more of these. If you have questions after the fact, ask me. And thanks for watching. See ya. Bye.